her to do? What's it all about, anyway? That's quite a story, and it began 40 years ago, when the British Empire exhibition at Wembley saw the start of a proud career which nearly came to an untimely end in 1963, when this fine locomotive was retired from the service of its admiring public and passed into private hands. And the idea of a main-line express locomotive being bought privately to be run on British railways was one that caught the public imagination in a big way. From King's Cross, on the 14th of January 1963, she hauled an advertised passenger train under British Railways ownership for the last time. This, of course, was the station from which Flying Scotsman had left for the north so many times in the course of her 2 million miles of revenue-earning service. King's Cross top shed was in the grip of the big freeze-up as Flying Scotsman was prepared for her run to Doncaster. But, in spite of the Arctic weather, several important people came to make sure that on such a historic occasion, her toilet was not skimmed. TV, newsreel and press cameras were also there in force, including a number from the USA and Canada. Again and again, Alan Pegler, in his footplate finery, retold the story of how he came to save the lady of his dreams from a fate worse than death, ignominious dismissal to the scrap heap. Flying Scotsman had been groomed here many times before, on such celebrated occasions as the inauguration of the non-stop run of the Flying Scotsman train between London and Edinburgh in 1928, and the high-speed test run to Leeds and back in 1934, when she became the first steam locomotive officially to record a speed of 100 miles per hour. On this occasion, she did the run to Leeds in a few seconds under 2 hours 32 minutes, a time that has never since been better. And now it is a sad goodbye from the faithful friends who had tended her over the years at Top Shed and come to regard her with real affection. Meanwhile, Flying Scotsman is eagerly awaited at King's Cross Station. And so to the platform, to couple on to the 1:15 p.m. Leeds Express, and to be greeted by a crowd of several hundred who had come to see her off. There were carnations for Alan Pegler and the train crew. The station master had his top hat on as he read messages of congratulation with Alan Pegler's wife, Pauline, and the scene was reminiscent of a royal occasion. Now it's time for the final handshakes and good wishes. For the driver, these were anxious moments as the cameramen crowded to the very rails. But Flying Scotsman was away without mishap and dead on time. This snowy landscape near Hadley Wood was one of the few places without sightseers, but most of the way along the route to Peterborough, the only stop before Doncaster, railwaymen and enthusiasts were out to give a wave and a cheer. Up the long climb to Potter's Bar, Flying Scotsman got well into her stride. Indeed, a maximum speed of 90 miles an hour was reached later while many of the passengers were still having lunch. quick stop at Peterborough, Flying Scotsman was off again on the 80-mile run to Doncaster. She made up time steadily all the way, and was 4 minutes early passing Retford. 3 miles north of there, at the Barnby Moor level crossing, a party of family friends had turned out to see the latest Pegler acquisition. This called for a lot of waving by Alan Pegler and his wife from the train, and a long blast on the whistle. The sun was setting in a frosty sky as Flying Scotsman approached Doncaster, where she came to a stand exactly 6 minutes early. In those same workshops at Doncaster where Flying Scotsman was built, they carried out the restoration work on the locomotive in a remarkably short time. She was ready for steaming trials now, only 24 days after her arrival from London. Two trial runs with empty coaches were made from Doncaster to New England, near Peterborough and back. The locomotive was uncoupled at Peterborough, and after servicing and turning, was recoupled to the other end of the train, thus providing an opportunity to obtain these unique views of the locomotive at the intermediate stage before repainting. During the preceding 3 weeks, the alterations carried out included moving the maker's plates from the cab sides to the smoke box, replacement of the single chimney, and removal of the big smoke deflectors. Although the tender still carried the British Railways emblem and the number 60103 still showed on the cab sides, there was now no number at all on the front. Many weeks of freezing weather had begun to affect the state of the track, so there was in fact a speed limit of 60 miles per hour on both these runs. But despite this, enough information could be gained to prove that the mechanical work on the locomotive had been completed satisfactorily. The load in each case was of 12 coaches weighing 377 tons. On Tuesday, the 26th of March, 10 weeks to the day since alterations were commenced in the works, Flying Scotsman emerged from the locomotive paint shop at Doncaster. She had now said goodbye forever to her last links with British Railways, the number 60103 on the cab sides and the comparatively dark locomotive green paint with which everyone was familiar. Grey primer at one stage of the operation gave her a curious appearance. Then the old LNER apple green paint was applied, the locomotive lined out, her original number 4472 painted on in gold leaf, and the letters LNER painted on her newly acquired corridor tender. Resplendent in all her former glory, Flying Scotsman drew many admiring glances from Alan and Pauline Pegler and railway officials. She ran light to Buxton and back a few days later, and early in April hauled a private two-coach special to Finsbury Park, running via Lincoln, March and Cambridge. These journeys were unpublicised, but caused some very surprised faces en route. But the first public run took place on Saturday the 20th of April, when Flying Scotsman hauled the Festiniog Railway Special from Paddington to Ruaben. Despite rain and half a gale, literally thousands of people turned out to see her. The train itself was fully booked weeks earlier, when it was announced that Flying Scotsman would be hauling it. While the train was still steaming through Buckinghamshire, a crowd of 8,000 enthusiasts was already assembling at Birmingham. after considerable delay at Snow Hill, the special eventually got away, and shortly before reaching Rhuaben, Flying Scotsman, for the first time in her 40 years, entered the Principality of Wales. Rhuaben station, in spite of the rain, was packed from one end to the other with spectators and photographers. Flying Scotsman's second public run on Saturday the 18th of May was a very long and unusual one, from Lincoln to Southampton and back, hauling a special train organized by the Gainsborough Model Railway Society. A new Pullman car was next to the engine and an observation car on the rear. And as in the case of the Festiniog special, every seat on the train was sold and huge crowds lined the route. This journey provided another first. The first time Flying Scotsman had ever been to the south coast. The round trip of 500 miles was completed with ease, the locomotive steaming freely the whole way. Now that Flying Scotsman's availability for special excursions is widely known, it is confidently expected that this grand old veteran will be seen increasingly on the tracks of Britain, adding new devotees everywhere to the long list of her admirers.